Hello everybody and welcome to chapter 10 of the book of Bereishit as we continue to travel through Tanach together. Chapter 10, Perek Yud, has 32 verses, 32 psukim, and it starts on page 64 and 65 in the Koren Sachs Chumash. Just a little bit of an introduction before we get started. This chapter will list the descendants of Noach's sons, of Shem and Cham and Yafet, and these will be the ancestors for the 70 nations of the entire world. Everyone alive today descends from these 70 descendants that are named in this chapter. That's going to be the 14 sons and grandsons of Yefet, the 30 sons and grandsons of Cham, and the 26 sons and grandsons of Shem. And you'll see a couple of familiar names, perhaps, that you've seen before. Yafet, for example, has a son named Yavan, from whom sprouts the Greek Empire. Two of Cham's sons are very famous to many, Canaan and Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim, of course, being the region of Egypt. And his grandson was the famous Nimrod, known to be the first mighty man on earth. And although the Torah doesn't tell us a great deal about him, other sources reveal his involvement in the Tower of Babel, which we will read about in chapter 11, and his confrontation with Avraham. So with that in mind, let's start together. Chapter 10, verse 1. Ve'ele toldos b'nei Noach. These are the descendants of Noach's sons. Shem, Cham, Vayafes. Shem, Cham, and Yefes. Vayivaldu lahem banim achar hamabul. After the flood, children were born to them. Verse 2, b'nei Yefes. The sons of Yefes were Gomer, Umagog, Umadai, V'yavan, V'suval, Umeshech, V'siras. Gomer, Magog, Madai, Yavan, Tuval, Meshech, and Siras. Magog as well will be a very familiar name to some if you've ever heard of the famous war between Gog and Magog. Uvnei Gomer, the sons of Gomer were Ashkenaz, Verifas, V'Sogarma. Sometimes we don't necessarily need to translate these names because they are as they sound. The next verse, Uvnei Yavan, the sons of Yavan, Elisha v'Sarshish, Kittim v'Dodanim. Verse 5, Me'ela nifradu iye hagoyim ba'artzosam ish lil shono. From these the sea-going nations spread out to their territories, each with its own language, by their clans and their nations. Verse 5, Me'ela nifradu iye hagoyim ba'artzosam ish lil shono. From these the sea-going nations spread out to their territories, each with its own language, Lemishbachosam begoyehem, by their clans and their nations. Verse 6, Uvnei Cham, the sons of Cham, Cush, Umitzrayim, Ufut, Uchnaan. Verse 7, Uvnei Chush, the sons of Cush, Sava, V'chavila, V'savta, V'rama, V'savtacha. Uvnei Rama, Sheva Udadan, and the sons of Rama were Sheva and Dedan. Verse 8, V'chush Yolad es Nimrod, Chush fathered Nimrod, who heichel lihiyos gibor ba'aretz, the first mighty warrior on earth. Verse 9, Hu haya gibor tzayid lifnei Adonai, he was a mighty hunter before Hashem. Al kain ye'omar kenimrod gibor tzayid lifnei Adonai, which is why people still say, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before Hashem. Verse 10, Vatahi reishis mamlachto Bavel, his kingdom began with Bavel, with Babylon, Ve'erech ve'akad ve'chalner, and Erech and Akkad and Chalner, be'eretz Shinar, in the land of Shinar. Verse Yud Aleph, verse 11, Min ha'aretz hahi yatza Ashur. From that land, Ashur went out. Vayiven es Ninveh, and built Ninveh, which is a city familiar to us from the book of Jonah, Ve'es Rechovos Ir ve'es Kalach. And he also built Rechovot Ir and Kalach. Verse 12, Ve'es Resen bein Ninveh uvein Kalach. And Resen, between Ninveh and Kalach, hi ha'ir hagdola, that is the great city. Verse 13, Umitzrayim Yolad, and Mitzrayim fathered es Ludim, ve'es Anamim, ve'es Lahavim, ve'es Naftuchim. He fathered the Ludim, the Anamim, the Lahavim, and the Naftuchim. Ve'es Pasrusim, ve'es Kasluchim. He also fathered Pasrusim and the Kasluchim. Asher Yatsu Misham Plishtim ve'es Kaftorim, from whom the Plishtim, the Philistines descended, and the Kaftorim, not to be confused with Palestinians. Verse 15, Uchnan yolad es Sidon b'choro ve'es Ches. And Canaan fathered Sidon his firstborn, and Ches, ve'es haYevusi, ve'es haEmori, ve'es haGigashi. And he also fathered the Jebusites, the Amorites, and the Girgashites, ve'es haChivi, ve'es ha'Arki, ve'es haSini, as well as the Hivites, the Arkites, and the Sinites. Ve'es ha'Arvadi, ve'es ha'Tzmari, ve'es ha'Chamasi, as well as the Arvadites, the Zemarites, and the Hamathites. Later, these Canaanite families became dispersed. Verse 19. Vayhi gavul haknani mitzidon bo'acha grara ad Aza. The Canaanite borders were from Sidon towards Gerar near bo'acha Sodoma va'amorah, and towards Sodom, Amorah, va'adma utsvoyim ad Lasha, and Adma and Sfoyim, which is near Lasha. Verse 20. Eile v'nei Cham lemishpachosam lil shalosam. These were the descendants of Cham by their clans and their languages, by their families and their languages, ba'artzosam b'goyehem, with their lands and their nations. Verse 21. Ulashem yulad gamhu. Sons were also born to Shem. Avi kol b'nei Ever achi Yefes hagadol. The older brother of Yefet, he was the ancestor of all the sons of Aver. Verse 22, B'nei Shem, Elam va'Ashur. The sons of Shem were Elam and Ashur, va'Arpachshad, v'Lud, va'Aram, as well as Arpachshad, Lud, and Aram. Uvnei Aram, and the sons of Aram, were Utz, v'Chul, v'Geser, v'Mash. Va'Arpachshad yolad es Shalach. Arpachshad fathered Shalach, but Shelach yolad es Aver. And Shelach was the father of Aver. And later when we read about Jacob studying in the yeshiva, the academy of Shem and Aver, these are the two people who we're talking about. Shem as the original ancestor, Aver as one of the descendants. Verse 25, Aver yulad shnei vanim. Aver fathered two sons. Shem ha'echad Peleg, the first was called Peleg, Kivyamav niflaga haaretz, for in his time the earth was divided. The Shem achiv Yaktan, and his brother was named Yaktan. Verse 26, V'Yaktan yalad es Almodad ve'es Shalef. Yaktan fathered Almodad and Shalef. Ve'es Chatzar Maves ve'es Yarach, and also Chatzar Maves and Yarach. Verse 20, Ve'es Hadoram ve'es Uzal ve'es Dikla. He also fathered Doram, Uzal, and Dikla. Verse 28, Ves Oval, Ves Avimael, Ves Shava, and also Oval, Avimael, and Shava. Verse 29, Ves Ophir, Ves Chavila, Ves Yovav. He also fathered Ophir, Chavila, and Yovav. Kol Eile b'nei Yoktan. All these were Yoktan's sons. Vayihi Moshava mimesha. Their settlements extended from Mesha, Bo'acha Sefara ha-Hakedem, towards Safar, in the eastern hill country. Verse 31, Eile b'nei Shem lemishpachosam l'shalosam. These were the descendants of Shem by their families and their languages, ba'artzosam l'goyehem, with their lands and their nations. And finally, verse 32, Eile mishpachos b'nei Noach l'soldosam b'goyehem. These then are the clans, the families of the sons of Noach by their lines in their nations. Umei Eile nifradu hagoyim ba'aretz achar hamabul. And from these the nations spread out across the earth after the flood. And that's all for chapter 10. Join us for chapter 11, where we will read about the story of the Tower of Babel, where everyone was trying to build this tower in order to reach Hashem. And as a result of that, all of these descendants become scattered across the world, each with their own region, each with their own language, exactly as we have been talking about in chapter 10. And then we will conclude Parshat Noach by talking about these descendants again and how long they lived for, but focusing now on the 10 generations between Shem and Avraham, following the thread that takes us from the son of Noach, from Shem, right the way through to the birth of Avraham. And this is significant because these are the 10 generations that allow us to reach the original ancestor of the Jewish people. And in fact, our rabbis point out in the Midrash that the reason why the Torah gives us these lists, the 10 generations between Adam and Noach, followed by the 10 generations between Noach and Avraham, the reason why we list these descendants is so that we can sift through all of the people in the world until we find the gem, the pearl, that is Avraham, and he can get the Jewish story started properly. So I look forward to seeing you for chapter 11. In the meantime, have a wonderful and meaningful day.